think that I've actually been dreading turning 22 for the last like 6 months or so. And that's because 6 months ago is when I moved to LA. And basically, when I moved here, I kind of set myself a lot of goals that I've been looking forward to kind of accomplishing and like getting towards over the next however many years I plan to be here and whatnot. But I think the truth is, and the problem with that is that you can't just assume, not assume that things will happen in the future, but you can't just assume that everything will work out to accomplish what you want to do if you're not actually like working to do it, if that makes sense. And now that I've hit the 6 month mark and I actually turned 22 in 2 hours, um, I think I've honestly like I've done everything that I most of what I wanted to do in those first 6 months, but it's weird because you still don't really feel satisfied because you only hit your first mark and you haven't hit the marks you've set in the future. And it feels like in 6 months so much time has passed, and within those 6 months I could have accomplished everything that I've actually planned to do, which is a totally it doesn't make sense. It's a foolish way of thinking because you need to set goals for the long term and have steps like a plan to accomplish all of them. You can't accomplish everything at once in one period of time. And I think that's like what I'm struggling with right now because obviously I knew like this time would come that I'd be turning this age, and I just think that like my age 21 year, my age 21 season, if we think of it like that, had so many like ups and downs. Like I felt like the first half was like really great, and then the second half has been, not that it hasn't been also great because it has, but just for different reasons, but it's been much more difficult. And I think that's where you kind of really learn about yourself, is like in the most difficult moments, because it's like my first half of the year of this of being 21 was so easy. Like I had so much time. I didn't have much time alone to like grow as just myself. I felt like I was always kind of surrounded by other people, and that kind of distracted me a lot from like not like who I was, but like kind of figuring out who I could grow to be. And then this last 6 months has been mostly me on my own, I felt like, and that's done wonders for my own development, but also it's made me think like, oh, I can be doing so much more of all this time I have, and why am I not? And I don't really know if that makes sense. I think that one of the things you really got to do is just kind of like at this age is literally just like branch out and do the most you can. Like you can't just keep doing what you want to do. If you keep doing the same things you do every day, you're just going to stay the same person, right? And you don't want to be the same person at 21 that you are at 25 or 30, right? So you got to keep doing things. Like for example, I'm turning 22, but I'm nowhere near the same person that I was this time last year. This time last year, I was a completely different person. And I feel like everybody could say that more or less, but like think about how different you actually are. Like I've been in LA now for about 9 months total-ish. When I first came here in like September, I guess, and this time last year I'd never even been to the West Coast. So that's crazy to think about, right? And then I think about all like, the people I've met just from being here. Not even that like I tried to meet, just like I met naturally, just from the fact that I'm like present in this area of the world, and that I didn't know about just last year. And then I think about like, wow, that little change, which I guess there isn't so little, like moving across the country isn't so little, right? But that little change actually created so many bigger changes, like in retrospect. And I think that's like the important thing is, just doing the little changes because you don't know how they're going to snowball into bigger ones. Something that I've learned that I really like, I think now, is this idea of, and I think why I've been so scared to kind of turn this age, even though it's like totally like, it doesn't even matter. I'm actually pretty young for all my friends. Most people have been 22 for months now. Some are turning 23 in just like 2 months. So, which is like crazy. I also have friends now that are like already like in their late 20s. Where before, like I didn't have a single friend who basically wasn't my age or maybe like a tad younger. So that's new. But what I think I've realized that I really enjoy now is kind of just like concept of time and kind of what you learn to like create memories of in the past that maybe didn't deserve memories in the present. Like for example, it's like I look back to like my first year like college, as like in like such a different lens, where like I knew in that first year I'd be looking back on it in a positive light, but now I'm not seeing it for the moments that I was living day to day. Then I was seeing it as like, I'm now looking at it as the overall experience, which obviously you can't do in the moment. When you're living something in the moment, you can't view it from an overall lens, because there is no overall. You haven't gotten to the end yet. Like, for example, this first 6 months, I can now kind of view these 6 months that I've been in LA from an overall perspective. But 3 months ago, I couldn't, because I hadn't even reached the 4th month mark, if that makes sense. And I've always thought like the concept of like nostalgia is like so cool, because being nostalgic of something means you're actually leaving out a lot of the parts that kind of don't deserve to be nostalgized, if that's a word. For example, people love to be nostalgic about like old movies and old TV shows and whatnot, and then they go back and they actually watch them and they go, oh, maybe this isn't so great as I remembered it. But it's the good parts that like really stick with you, and then when you relive those parts, that's when you go, oh wait, this is even better than I remembered, and that's why you turn something into a nostalgic memory. I feel like we're seeing this a lot these days with movies and the quality of movies, and I don't mean quality as in like actually like how good a movie is, but like how a movie looks and sounds and feels and what it says. There was a period of time, I feel like, especially in maybe going into this decade, where movies were so addicted. They were focused on just looking the best they could. A movie had to look the most realistic it could. Everything needed to look so good. And video games were still suffering from this concept, is that like realism is key. But now, in this present year, I feel like that has really taken a step back, and people have realized that we spent so much time in the past trying to get to the future, that now that we're in the future and the future is boring, and the past was actually cool, because the past had style. For example, I really loved the movie Backrooms, because that movie did such a good job at it made the poor video quality in the like the camcorder, the recording found footage scenes. Those are the ones that stood out, because it was so stylized, even though it looked like bad or like poor quality because of like, you know, the camera that it was filmed on. It didn't it didn't feel bland. It felt like something unique, even though that camera used to just be like what people had back then. And it actually got to the point where like I wish there was more found footage sequences in the movie, because the normal camera is boring. The normal camera looks too good. And I think that's so fascinating, because I feel like that kind of speaks to just like what we're feeling in the world these days in general. People are always looking to the past and saying, oh, the past was better for this. And the past doesn't even have to be like 20 years ago. It could be just a year ago. People would be like, oh, things are better a year ago. And then they leave out the bad parts, because they see what's bad now, and they see what's bad now used to be good. So then they leave the bad parts out back then, and it's like this endless cycle. And that's that's funny enough, that's like what aging feels like. It's like it's like, oh, now I'm 22. I'm gonna be 22 in 2 hours. I wish I could have stayed 21, but then I forget all like the hard parts that I had of being 21. And honestly, there weren't many. 21 was a really good year for me. And so is 20, and so is 19. It's the further back I go, I just think, oh, these are actually great years, because I actually forgot all the bad parts, and like I leave all those parts out, because why would you? But like, I feel like the last 6 months of being 21 perfectly correlate to my first 6 months of actually living in LA, like on my own, and not within school. And that is so interesting, because I just love when things line up. I love when like numbers line up and time lines up, with things line up with each other, and like things kind of go together perfectly. That's really interesting to me. So it's really cool that those two things line up, my first 6 months in LA and my last 6 months being 21, because I can put them side by side. Because like I said, my first 6 months being 21 were so different from my last 6 months. My first 6 months felt like I was moving nonstop. I was always doing something new. I was always jumping around from places to places. I was back home, and then I moved to LA. Then I came back home, and then I went back to LA. And the first time I was in LA, it was all new. And then I went home and I was like, oh, this sucks. I want to go back to LA. And then I went back to LA, and now it's all new again, but in like a different way. But at the same time, it's like I'm reliving old things. But also my first memory of LA from when I was here, the first 3 months and the end of last year, feels so different. It feels like I was in a different version of LA, because actually living in LA like on my own, like I am now, like in an apartment, is like a whole different experience. Oh my god, I went off on such a tangent. I like don't even know what I'm speaking about. But anyway, yeah, I don't have any actual advice. Like turning 22, like there's really no advice. I just think it's like do more things, because the last thing I would want to be would just be still at home and having not experienced everything that I did in the last 6 months. Because the last 6 months were so hard, they were so difficult. But I felt like I learned the most about myself I've ever learned, and that's why I feel like I'm a totally different person now. Like in retrospect, and like I said, this is the thing about nostalgia, is that like looking back and actually saying in retrospect is kind of misleading, because when you're looking at things in retrospect, you're not actually living them in the fullest, like that you could only in the moment. But in retrospect, looking at like when I was 19 and 20, those kind of feel like I was like, and honestly most of 18, like I felt like I was just kind of the same person those like 3 years. But looking back on it, I'm sure in the moment I would completely disagree, but like compared to who I've grown into just in the last 6 months, I feel like I've made more development than in 2 years of being 19 and 20. And 19 and 20 were they were solid static years, like not much change. I was just in school doing my thing, and I feel like on a month-to-month basis in those years, nothing was happening that like required me to really grow that much, because those years were more or less kind of the same things were happening, which isn't a bad thing either. And I feel like in college it's okay to have, because, well, I don't know, because in college is a time you want to grow a lot, but to get to those 2 years, I feel like I had to grow a lot. And those 2 years compared to the 2 years previous were completely different, and now those 2 years compared to the next 2 years, which is what I'm currently in, are going to be completely different. So yeah, that's a really weird way to look at it, and I don't even know if that makes sense in my own mind. But yeah, I think I'm gonna end this here, because I don't know what else to say. But yeah, don't turn 22. I haven't yet, and I'm already dreading it. But at the same time, I'm kind of excited, because I can like get over this like fear that I've had. Like once you turn like just aging in general. Because it feels like 21 is like the last year that like actually matters, you know what I mean? It's like you turn 21 and then you get to like drink, and then you're like officially like a full adult. There's no more age parameters on anything. When you turn 18, like you're an adult, but there's still so many things that are kind of locked behind just life experience in general. But once you're 21 and like, I've moved away, and like I live on my own, I live across the country, like now it's like there's no more prerequisites to being anything else. Like I kind of just like, I feel like I've unlocked the ability to kind of do whatever I want. Now it's just kind of up to me. But also, it's not just up to me to do it in the moment. It's up to me to learn how to do these things that I want to do, because you can't just do everything you want to do. Like what I was saying in the beginning of this like video, is that you can set all these goals for the future, and then I'm saying, oh, in the last 6 months, maybe I accomplished my goal that I set out for the first 6 months, but what was stopping me from doing everything else in this time frame, because it's felt so long. But like that's not how that works. Like it takes time to do things, and it's about using that time to do those things instead of letting that time go by and then saying, oh, I wish I used those months for other things. Yeah, I really don't know if that makes sense. I feel like I just contradicted myself too. But anyway, yeah.